Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's CINC Community Accountability webinar, all about finding money in your database. My name is Kayla Priest. I'm going to be the host for today. I'm a member of the CINC live events team. I've been with CINC for about 5 years, and I really am excited about this topic for the ability to share what I have learned over these past 5 years from working with really successful CINC clients and teams, and also my background in running teams and hiring and training new employees. This is one of my favorite topics because I think that with all the wonderful tech that you have at your fingertips with CINC and with any other systems or processes that you have in place, you can really have like everything done right. You can have the right idea, you can have the right intentions, but if there's not someone holding two groups of people accountable, all those great systems and tech can fall apart. And so what are those two groups of people, and what does accountability really even mean? I'm going to be today talking about what accountability looks like for site owners and team leaders. And you'll hear me use those terms pretty interchangeably. Basically, I mean, who's in charge, quote unquote, of the team, who runs the team, who's kind of that final decision maker. That can be a site owner, it can be a team leader, it can be an operations manager, it can be someone who is an agent who also has the designation of a team leader of a small team. So in other words, whenever you hear me use any of those terms, team leaders, operations manager, site owner, that's who I'm talking about. Those people where they are the ones that are either getting their card charged every month for the product for CINC or for the other tech that you're using, those people who are kind of the decision makers of the team. And then secondly, we've got agents, ISAs. And so basically in that group, you'll hear me use those terms interchangeably. These are the people who are boots on the ground, working every day to meet clients, talk with clients, close clients, go out to showings. These are the people who have personal goals and also are accountable to team goals. Now, does that mean that site owners, team leaders aren't also accountable to the agent's goals? No, everyone's accountable to help each other meet their goals. And that's why, to me, accountability is a puzzle that we have to work together to put together. If there's only site owners worrying about the agent's goals and they lose sight of the team goals or vice versa, it all falls apart. We're missing some pieces in the middle and it never comes together to show us this beautiful photo on our puzzle. So today I'm breaking down what accountability looks like for both of these groups, site owners, agents, and how we have to be accountable to each other. In other words, yes, there are team goals, but team leaders cannot only worry about the team goals, they also have to be supporting the goals of their agents. Agents have personal goals, but they cannot lose sight of how their personal goals affect the team goals. So one thing that's really important to ask yourself, whether you're here as a site owner or you're here as an agent, do you know your team goals right now? Have you communicated them as a team leader successfully so everyone on the team understands the role that they play in meeting those? If you're an agent, do you have personal goals, and do you currently have a team leader who is helping you to reach those personal goals? So one thing that you have to decide before we even want to get into what does accountability even mean is, what does accountability mean to me? What do I need to help me reach my goals and my team goals? Is the communication there? Are you maybe on a team, but you say, I don't really want to mess with the team goals. I'm all about me. I'm an independent contractor. A lot of times I hear, site owners say, I really can't get this agent to do anything. They're an independent contractor. But when you join a team, there is a different mentality, because you could be out on your own and you could not have that team leader who's saying, I need you to submit your numbers. I need you to do this. But then why did we join a team in the first place? So again, we have to understand what our overall goal is, numbers wise, and what kind of work-life balance wise. If you don't want this kind of extra layer of being accountable either to team goals or as a site owner to agent goals, then maybe the team structure is not working as it is, and you need to make it work for whatever accountability means to you. So we're going to break down accountability for these two different groups and how, again, it all helps us as we're building a puzzle together. So let's start first with site owners and what I think accountability really means for a site owner. Now we are going to go through some slides first, and then I'm going to show you some kind of ways that we can track numbers and get into the site and look at some things in just a moment. But first, I want to make sure we all fully understand exactly what it is that accountability needs to mean to these two groups. So let's break it down a little bit more. To me, I think there are two major pieces that help site owners be more accountable to team goals and to agents' personal goals. And the first is going to be through meetings. Now, that is not a fun thing to think about. No one really likes meetings. However, it is necessary for us to have great communication. And to me, it starts in the interview. So when a site owner team leader is interviewing someone to join the team, I think it's really important that the great communication start there. Not only being transparent with what it is like to be a member of the team, but also understanding why the agent wants to join a team. What is the agent's ultimate goal? If you don't understand for every single individual person their why or their motivation for either working in real estate or joining your team or getting their license or whatever it is, then you will really miss a golden opportunity to understand how they not only best like to work, but how they can contribute to the team. Not everyone wants to make $1 million a year. Some people are going to be comfortable making $200,000 a year, $100,000 a year. Some people are going to be comfortable making $60,000 a year. And it does not matter if that seems like a small or a large amount of money to you. It only matters that that's what the agent's goal is, and how can you either help them reach that, and how can you helping them reach that help you get closer to your team goals. And on the other side, your own personal goals, because the team goals are going to feed the site owner's goals. So it really has to start right at the beginning. The training is really important because you need to, again, be transparent and clear with how things work. But if we only do it then, and then there's the communication kind of stops and we just expect people to go with the flow and figure it out, we really break down the communication. Therefore, we break down any sort of accountability we have to each other. So why are meetings important? Not only for communication, but to keep people engaged, to keep people excited about what they're doing, and to make sure that we are inching towards our goals at the end of the month, quarter, year, etc. So I think there are two really important meetings that have to be hosted on an ongoing basis by team leaders or site owners to keep everyone on the same page. And the first is going to be a weekly meeting. That weekly meeting typically needs to take place early in the week. I'd say probably on Tuesdays, and the morning works best because that can set the tone for the day and the rest of the week. Now I say Tuesday because we know that agents are out often doing showings on the weekends. Maybe we need Monday to kind of catch up on our paperwork and make sure that, you know, everything is kind of continuing in forward motion. And then Tuesday is when we can kind of say, okay, how'd the weekend go and what are our goals for the week? So I typically see teams being successful holding this meeting on Tuesday mornings, say about 8 or 8:30. Now, why that early? Because we want agents to be able to leave that meeting and go directly into their morning prospecting time. Now, if you need any help with that side of things, the prospecting, what time, how to do it, there are other webinars that go in more in depth on that, but that's just kind of the reasoning on the time. These really shouldn't be any longer than 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes if you have a bigger team or a lot to go over. A question I typically get is, do they have to be in person? Can they be remote? Maybe we're our cloud-based office and we don't have that home base where we come in and meet. They absolutely can be remote, but people need to be engaged. It needs to be video on, and you need to be putting your input in, actually speaking, answering questions, engaging. So they are a little better when they're in person because it's a lot easier to engage and not be so checked out when they are in person. But if you do have to do it remote, that's okay. Now there does need to be an expectation of attendance. Now, of course, things happen, and we're not saying one strike you're out, you missed the weekly meeting and you're fired. That's not what I'm saying. But there does have to be an expectation of people attending. I'd say 85 to 90% of them, and that needs to be part of the agreement when they join the team. Or if you're adding this on, get everyone to sign kind of in addition to their agreement, saying that they understand that this is the expectation. And if there is going to be a consequence to missing them, which there should be, because if there's an expectation, there has to be a consequence for not meeting it. And I'm not talking to be punitive, but I am talking about if you miss, say, 3, 4, or whatever you decide it is, that you get turned off for lead routing, for example. I'm not saying that someone does something wrong, we blow up and we make a huge deal out of it, but it's just a question of, hey, I've noticed you haven't been to these weekly meetings lately. What's going on? So let's talk really quickly before I get more into that on what we talk about in these weekly meetings. So this is the time where we can talk about where we are in terms of reaching our, again, either weekly, monthly, quarterly, or yearly goals as a team. It can be a time to introduce either new processes or a new piece of tech. And I'm not saying that someone comes to the meeting and they say, and you're going to say, we're implementing this new piece of tech today, because that's not great change management. Change management is how you communicate and effectively walk people through changes to their daily lives, whether that be work or personal. It's not springing something on someone, it's introducing the concept, getting everyone on board, answering questions, and then saying we're going to be implementing this in a week, a month, 2 months, but we want to work together on this. So that can be the time for announcements of that sort. This is also the time where you can do call outs for someone doing something great, someone meeting a big goal, closing a big deal, really nailing down a client that everyone had been trying to get in touch with for a long time. So this can be time for accolades, but it also can be time for everyone to go around the room and say something that they're working on, what their goal is for the week, good news that they want to share. Really, you get to decide exactly what you want people to share, but it really is a good idea to have everyone share a piece of something, what their next closing is going to be. Do they have a question and they want to get some feedback from everyone? But again, we want to make sure that we keep this timely so people can get in and get out and get into their prospecting time, about 20 to 25 minutes, 30 if you do have a bigger team. The reason that we're not going to get into the nitty gritty of things, in other words, we're not going to really break down and talk through details, is because that is where our second meeting comes in. So remember I said there are 2 meetings that I think are really crucial. The first is that weekly team meeting, and the second is going to be a one-on-one with every agent on the team. Now, if I say that and you're a site owner and you're looking at me and you're saying, Kayla, I just don't have the time to meet with everyone, then this might be a good opportunity for you to say, am I still in production and also trying to lead a team? And which do I really want to do? And I'm not saying that we need to make a decision and do it right now, but it's just time to start thinking. If you cannot effectively hold these meetings and stay in production and recruit and do all that stuff, then maybe it's time to start looking at how financially you can work to get out of production and truly just recruit and run your team, because they really are 2 separate full-time jobs. If you're saying, I actually want to stay in production because I really love it, but I also want to run this team, then maybe we start looking at how financially you can add a team leader, an operations manager, or someone who can oversee some of these things for you and take those off your plate. Because it's really just truly almost impossible to do both well full-time. So whether it's going to be you holding these one-on-ones or someone that you hire to do that, let's talk about what a one-on-one looks like. Again, it's 1 time a week with every person on your team. And these typically are going to be about 15 to 20 minutes. And I really like to see them be recurring, same day, same time, every week. So that way everyone knows I don't schedule an appointment over that time, because this is a really important time that we sit together, and I schedule around it. If we're constantly moving it, then we find that they actually don't get held as often as they should. So recurring, same day, same time for the same people every week. What are we going to talk about in there? I love to see someone have potentially, to make it really easy, like a Google Doc where it's going to be accessible by me as a site owner and by the agent it's going to have the agent's name at the top, and then it's going to have the date of the meeting and then notes on it. So that way, when we meet next week, we've got our notes from last week. Both of us have access to it. And in fact, both of us can add to it. So if there's a question that I need to ask, and I know my one-on-one's coming up as an agent, I can add it to the doc so I don't forget it, for example. So I think it's really important that we, again, make these timely for people, because I'm not trying to make your life harder. I'm actually trying to make your life easier by increasing your communication and therefore how accountable you are to your goals. So we're going to be talking about numbers for the previous week. So if I'm doing my one-on-one on Wednesday, I'm looking up the previous week up until now. How did you do on your goals? Did you meet them? Did you not? If you did, why do you think you did? What did you do right? If you came really close but not quite, what is the 10% that you can do better with this week? If you were pretty far from them, do we need to adjust the goals? Were they unrealistic in the first place? Why do you think you didn't meet them, and how can we increase, say, by 20% this week? So it's a lot of, as the site owner, questions, kind of leading questions, so we can have the agent start thinking of solutions. It's not your job as a site owner to always have every solution. A lot of times it's asking the thoughtful questions that get the other people to come up with the solutions. Therefore, it makes them more invested in the solution. So it's not, you didn't hit your goal, this is bad, I'm turning you off for lead routing, and see you next week. It's, why do you think that happened? What can we do this week to get even just 10% better? And it's a conversation, it's an open dialogue. I think it's really important that both of you have your computers in front of you, and you can pull up your CINC dashboard. And as a site owner, you should be able to say, show me your next 3 closings. And they should have the leads or clients in the database and pull them up and say, I'm closing this person scheduled for this time. I'm out showing them, and I think we're about to write an offer. They need to show you where the next 3 closings are coming from. And if they can't show you that, why? What are we doing that we're not successfully kind of having that rolling business, or we can always look for those next 3 closings? So it's really important that you understand where they are in relation to their goals and where they are in relation to closings, and then asking, what can I do to help you meet your goals this next week? And this is also a time where you can have teaching opportunities, where if you see that they either maybe have not been adding notes, maybe they haven't been following up well, and I'm going to talk about numbers and how you can see that later. Again, asking, what's going on? Is everything good? What can I do to help? So these 2 meetings, the weekly meeting and the one-on-one, are really crucial. I'm going to take a sip of water really quick. If you've got questions, now would be a great time to type them in. In a moment, I'll kind of put up a slide here to talk about the timing of these meetings again, but know that you can make it work for whatever works for you, but it really is important that that team meeting is early in the week, and then that those one-on-ones are, again, recurring same day and time every week. So the second piece here for site owners that really helps them play their role in the accountability puzzle is true leadership. Right? We can't say, yeah, we're going to have a team meeting this week, but next week I don't feel like it, or, the one-on-ones are not really working. So let's just not do them. It really is being open to being a real leader, and not just being a leader in name only. It's really important that you are okay with people coming in and asking questions and asking for your guidance. It's really important that you are open and available to help when people have conflict. It's also important that you are not afraid to have consequences when things are not followed. There's a lot of times where, it's like, again, they're an independent contractor. I don't want them to leave, and so maybe I just won't say anything. But when you have that good, again, change management style, and your agents really understand that you have their best interests at heart and nothing's punitive, that we're all here to help each other get closer to our goals, then those conversations become a lot better. Also making sure that you're hiring for your culture and looking for the right fit, not just someone who puts up big numbers. When we have the right people on our team, it makes our job of leadership a lot easier. So here's that meeting schedule that I mentioned before. Remember, Tuesdays around 8:30 works really well so the agents can leave and go straight into their prospecting time. And then I think that Wednesdays throughout the day work really well for the one-on-ones, so that team meeting is still fresh. However, again, if you do have a bigger team and you need to split those up between multiple days, that's okay. This is just kind of where you can get started and then make it work for you. So now that we've spent some time talking about the site owner side of accountability, let's talk about agents and ISAs. And remember that I'll use those positions interchangeably because both essentially are working toward the same types of goals. Now I'm going to talk about tracking and then also using the CINC method. And so as an agent and ISA, you are accountable to tracking your numbers and tracking your goals and being held accountable to your goals. And you're also need to be held accountable to using what's called the CINC method. Now, again, that is something that we do go more in depth in not only CINC University, which is our in-person 3-day course, but also in my Who Do I Call Today webinar. So please check out cincommunity.com for both of those. After the webinar, you can check those out. So let's talk first about tracking. So what do I mean by tracking? I mean tracking how many dials we make, how many conversations come from those dials. Of those conversations, how many appointments did I set? Essentially, if I spoke to someone, I either set an appointment or I'm nurturing them for the appointment later. So dials, conversations, appointments. Of those appointments I set, how many showed up? Essentially, how many appointments were kept? Of those appointments, how many either listing agreements or buyer brokerage agreements did I get? Of those agreements, how many go under contract? And of those contracts, how many close? So essentially, we're tracking all of that so we can do several things. First of all, it's so we can work backwards from our yearly income goal to see how many dials we need to make. And I'm going to break that down in just a moment. It's so we can see if we're getting close to our goals or not, or if we need to adjust anywhere. It's so the site owner and you can see if there's a link broken in the chain. In other words, if you're having a lot of conversations, but not a lot of appointments, we know there's probably a scripting issue somewhere. If we get a lot of appointments showing up, but we don't get a lot of buyer brokerage agreements or listing agreements signed, then we probably need some presentation help. If we get a lot of contracts, but not a lot of closings, and there's maybe some follow-up or paperwork issues somewhere. So in other words, doing that will help us tighten up by finding where there's a link broken in the chain. So there are lots of different ways to track your numbers. There are some, systems and kind of other tech that can do that. It can also be as simple as self-reporting on an Excel or a Google Sheets situation. So you have to decide as a team what's the method that we use, and then you are being held accountable to doing that. Now, of course, your team leader will probably be tracking that themselves using the CINC system. For as example, the call summary is a great way to do that. But we have to also, as an agent, have awareness of what our numbers are as well. And so I personally love when I'm sitting down to make my calls to have a piece of paper and just tick marks for again, every dial, conversation, appointment, and then carrying that over to follow up with who did I actually meet with and all of those other numbers. So that's really important that you are held accountable and you're holding yourself accountable and being okay to have those conversations with a site owner about you didn't hit the goal of, say, 100 dials a day or a week or whatever it may be. Why was that? What can we do again to get just 10% better on that? And when I say that you need to be held accountable both to yourself and by the team lead for the CINC method, that is to make sure that every time you make a call, you leave a note. Every time you have a conversation, you leave a note with at least the 3 W's and some details. That is what they're looking for, when they're looking for it. In other words, their time frame and their why or their motivation. And when I say details, I mean, did they say they have a partner? Are they getting a divorce? Do they have children? What do they do for work? What do they like to do on the weekends? Anything that came up in that conversation, it's in the note. It is making sure that you set a reminder to follow up after we have that first initial conversation. If we're moving them over to appointment set, is to make sure that you are confirming that appointment with them right away. It is making sure that as they move along the pipeline, you are moving the pipeline, you are adjusting the saved search, which is crucial. So everything you found out they're looking for is reflected in the saved search. So that is the CINC method. That's what I talk about in that Who Do I Call Today webinar, and also what we go more in depth on at CINC University in person. So check out cincommunity.com if you want more info on either of those. But those are the two things as an agent that you really have to not only be accountable to yourself, but just be prepared to talk about with your site owner. So I mentioned that I would go more in depth on some tracking. So let's take a look, and if you will, I'm going to pause my screen share because I want to pull up something. Hello. So we're going to look at this new cool Zoom feature, the whiteboard. If you will, just put in the chat for me really quick and tell me that you can see this whiteboard. I'm going to draw a little squiggle. Can you see that? Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to just write some stuff here to help kind of illustrate what I mean when I say working backwards to find your goals. Now, I'm not that great at math. So I'm going to try to use some round numbers. And I also just jotted down some things here to make sure that I don't skip a step. So this is essentially how, either as a new agent starting out, an agent who's getting a little bit better about tracking, about working the CINC method, how you can work backwards from your income goal to really find what numbers make sense to you. And by that, I mean, not just saying, well, it sounds like a good idea to make 100 dials a week, or, 50 dials a day. That sounds good. Is it actually going to help us get closer to our goals? So I'm going to just be writing here in the whiteboard, just to kind of illustrate as I'm talking about it. So let's say in my first, one-on-one or even training session with the site owner, I say that I want to make $100,000 a year. That is my income goal. So I'm essentially now needing to start working backwards to see, if I want to make $100,000 a year, how many dials do I need to make to get that? And so this is something that, again, I'm using made up round numbers for this, but this is going to be even more powerful for you as agents if you are tracking your individual numbers and inputting them into this sort of formula. So if I say I'm going to make $100,000 a year, the next question I need to ask myself is, what's my average sale price per closing? And so again, that's going to vary market to market, agent to agent, depending on, just what kind of clients you're typically working with. But again, to use a nice round number, let's just say that my average price per sale is $200,000. So average price per sale. Okay, so let's say my average commission is 3%. Again, that's going to vary from market to market, agent to agent, whatever your agreement is, but just to use that nice, easy number, what is 3% of the 200,000? That is $6,000. So essentially we're saying per closing, I'm making $6,000. So if I wanted to make $100,000, I'm now doing essentially 100,000 divided by 6,000. How many deals do I have to get to do that? And that's going to be 16.6. Now, I understand that there are taxes and fees and everything that comes out of that. So that's why you just need to plug this in with your real numbers of how much you make per closing, probably after you pay all of that. But again, use your real numbers. This is an example. So if I know that I need to make 16.6 closings per year to make my $100,000 income. This is where tracking my dials and all of those other metrics after that we talked about. So now we're going to do the numbers. So let's say as I'm tracking, I find that these are my numbers. That let's say when I make 100 dials, I speak to 30 people. So we're going to say 100 dials gets me 30 conversations. And that is in range at our CINC University Power Hour. We find a 33% contact to appointment set ratio. And so that's kind of what I went for on this. So of those 30 conversations, let's say I set the immediate appointment with 20 people. So those other 10 people I'm nurturing, I'm following up with, I'm setting a reminder to follow up with them within the next 30 days. But of those 30 people I spoke to, I set 20 appointments. And that's going to be where I try to get the buyer brokerage agreement signed. I'm not necessarily talking about a showing yet. I'm talking about that initial appointment where we sit down, we talk about what it's like to work with me, what their ultimate goals are, and kind of that conversation. So we are setting 20 appointments. And let's just say of those 20 appointments that I set, 15 were kept, meaning 15 showed up. Maybe 20 people rescheduled or they ghosted me or whatever, right? So I'm finding out that 15 are kept. 15 people show up. And let's say of those 15 people that I have that initial meeting with, I'm getting some sort of signed agreement from 10 of them. Again, these are nice, easy numbers for me, whose brain doesn't work mathematically. So of those 10 people that I sign, let's say that 8 actually end up closing. And that could either be, I ended up selling their house. They ended up buying with me for whatever reason. 2 people changed their mind, decided to wait, whatever. So when I make 100 dials, I get 8 closings. So this is how you can work your own numbers in to figure this out. So 100 dials gets me 8 closings, and I want to do 16 a year, or 16, let's say, a quarter, or whatever it may be. This is essentially, and because these are those nice, easy round numbers, these numbers really don't make as much sense as they could. This is just how you figure it out. If I need to do 16 and a half, essentially closings to make my $100,000 a year, and it takes me 100 dials to get 8 closings, I know how many overall dials I need to do per year to get me to that 16, to get me to my $100,000. Yeah, Courtney asked this actual conversion number, just for numbers. I'm just showing this. Again, I had to use nice, easy round numbers because I'm not that great at math. This is just the method that you would use, the method that you would use. Again, just to make it easy. That's why I'm saying you would want to plug in your own numbers. When you make 100 dials, Courtney, how many conversations does that get you? How many appointments does that get you? Of those appointments, how many show up, et cetera, et cetera. That will help you know how many dials you need to do to make your goal. And the reason I wanted to go over this is because this is a question that I get, especially at CINC University, a lot during breaks and at the end of the day, is now that I've seen all this, I know I need to start tracking this, but I don't really know what numbers make sense to track. And I don't know what my goal should be. And again, we don't just want to make up a goal. We don't just want to make up, say, well, it sounds good for me to make 100 dials, but when you start tracking it, you find that when you make 100 dials, you have 10 conversations. And of those 10 conversations, you set 2 appointments, right? Then your numbers are going to look a lot different. And we know that we need to actually make like 300 dials a week instead of the 100 that I have here. Because again, these are not real numbers. These are easy numbers to show you the formula, in other words. So this is really important to do. If you are hiring a new agent, it's important for them to track their numbers for definitely the first 3 months before you really start holding them to numbers, because you need to know what their actual production looks like before we just start willy-nilly assigning things. And this is what we go over in the one-on-one as well. Did you get to your 100 dials last week? Did you get to how many appointments were kept? And again, where we're looking for those broken links in the chain. So I hope that was helpful for you to find the formula. I'm going to just copy this and put it in the chat again, just so you can find the formula, not so you can copy these numbers because they're not realistic. All right, so I'm going to close this and hello again, get back to our slides. So I also promised that we would take a look at the CINC method just briefly, again, because we do have the webinar and CINC University that goes more in depth on that. So let's go here. I thought I was signed into my testing site, but we're going to try that again right here. There we go. So what I'm going to pull up here, and I'm being cognizant of time, trying to watch our time to make sure I get us out in an hour. When I talk about the CINC method and holding yourself accountable to that, that's where we want to make sure that when we are working in our database, we are adjusting the pipeline as necessary, making sure that everyone doesn't stay in new lead, even if I've actually spoken to them, use the pipeline stages, move people as appropriate. Contacted means I had a good conversation with them where I found out those 3 W's, the what, the when, and the why. Appointment means that I'm meeting them for that initial appointment where we talk about their goals and what it's like to work with me. And we either get that buyer brokerage agreement or we do a listing presentation and we sign their listing. Showing means I'm out showing them homes or I'm showing their home. You know, I've seen some people when they call someone that's an old lead and they say, well, I actually bought last month, they mark them as sold. That's not what sold is. Sold is for I closed a deal with this person. Another part of the CINC method is making sure that we add appropriate notes. It is making sure that we add reminders when we've contacted someone and we need to follow up with them. Following up means I'm contacting them again in the next 30 days. It is also coming into their saved search and editing it to reflect the numbers that we did, or excuse me, that to reflect the conversation we had about what they're looking for, and making sure that it reflects the city, the beds and baths, and the price point that they're looking in. It is also working from our saved filters, using the P and the F filters to prospect and follow up. Prospect for P, follow up for F. So that is the CINC method. That's what you should be holding yourself accountable to and what you should be able to sit down with the site owner and look and say, here's what I've been doing, pulling up your next 3 closings because you've been on top of that CINC method. So when we talk about finding money in your database, when you have great accountability from the top down, from the bottom up, the site owner is on board with making sure that they are giving you great leadership, great communication, and everyone's on the same page. When the agents understand that their personal goals feed up into those bigger team goals and are willing, you know, to go to the site owner with questions and ask for the leadership, and you know, everyone's working together and we're not afraid to have the messy conversations because we know that we all have each other's best interests at heart. We consistently see agents getting at least 2 deals from your CINC leads per month. So if you want to get to that level, you have to be willing to put in those accountability steps. For agents, it's doing the weekly pipeline and daily filter check. That's what I just showed you in the system. It's for team leaders, making sure that you are willing to host the one-on-ones where you help people, where you help your agents find the people in their system who maybe are falling through the cracks. It's where when we have our team meetings, everyone learns because someone says, I had this issue last week and this is how I solved it. When we have that great communication, and when we have everyone who understands that their personal contribution plays into everyone's goals and, quite frankly, their paychecks, that we have that real teamwork, and we still have competition. We're still competitive with each other, but there's no of the cutthroat, I got to get this person, I got to get this lead away from this other agent because they're not doing a good job, or I'm going to steal this person. Like, there's none of that. There's just great communication, and honestly, people just putting their heads down and getting their work done and having the nice work-life balance to get it all figured out, instead of constantly chasing that now business because we didn't really set ourselves up for success this month, last month. So when we really make a concerted effort to make accountability a priority, not only our personal accountability, but how that feeds into the team accountability, that's when we see people finding money in their database. And it really is just doing what you need to do day in, day out, week in, week out, monthly, quarterly, yearly. So now we have time for some questions. If anyone has anything that they are curious about that they did not get to ask yet, this is the time for that. If you are typing those in, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I give you time to type those in while I go over a couple of other closing things. If you don't have any questions and you're going to leave us now, I just want to say a big thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time. And I hope you'll join me on another webinar coming up. You can find all of those at cincommunity.com, register for webinars. A note, I will be kind of overhauling the schedule and the topics here. I like to keep things fresh and change it up every now and then. So at about mid-May, we'll just see a shift in some of the topics in the schedule here. But for now, please do sign up for these. Again, cincommunity.com/webinars. And if you're wondering where the recording of this webinar will be, it will be at cincommunity.com/recordings. You can see that this is where all of our recordings go, and they're organized by topic, and they scroll horizontally so you can see even more. If you do want to join us in person for CINC University, that can be found here, CINC University, or cincommunity.com/CINC University. You can see we do sell out every month. So if you are wanting to join us in one of these upcoming cities, please get your tickets sooner rather than later. We are in Denver, Colorado in mid-May, and then our next cities are Atlanta and Toronto. We're really excited to finally make it to Canada. But the big news is that we are having CINC Summit again. Of course, we've had a hiatus for the past 2 years. Our CINC Homecoming Summit will be this October in Atlanta. We're so excited to host it in our hometown of Atlanta, and we really hope you'll join us. There are amazing keynote speakers, breakouts, amazing networking. I love meeting y'all at Summit. I also hosted a breakout at our last one, and it was just so much fun. And then there's also an amazing party. And since it's a homecoming summit, we're having a homecoming dance, a homecoming party. It's just really fun. It's kind of our Halloween party where everyone dresses up and has a lot of fun. And you can get tickets to not only Summit, but our pre-Summit events. So we're having a mastermind and a conversion day, exclusive Summit editions of mastermind and conversion day on the day before. And then Summit will be the 20th and the 21st. So all of that information is here. So I really hope you'll go to cincommunity.com and check out everything that we have to offer. And definitely, I hope to see you in person and on additional webinars later. thank you again so much for everyone for your time. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up because I don't see any other questions. If you do have questions after we hang up here, please give us a call. CINC support is a wonderful resource, and they can always reach out to me if they need to clarify anything that I said today. Have a great rest of the week, and I hope I see you next time. Bye-bye.